In the vastness of the galaxy, millions of stars burned like jewels in a dark ocean. Among them, one bright blue world called Valara Prime stood out, the home of the Valari Empire, a proud race of tall, silver-skinned warriors known for their strength and honor. Every year, the Valari hosted the Trials of Valor, a grand event where champions from different species came to prove their worth in single combat. To win even once in these trials was an achievement that brought great fame. To lose was no shame, for only the strongest and most skilled warriors were chosen to compete. The duels were not about hatred or war. They were about honor, courage, and respect. Among the warriors preparing for this year's trial was Commander Salira Vex, the undefeated champion of the Valari Empire. Her name alone brought silence in the halls of her people. She had never been defeated, not even once. Her long white hair flowed like silver fire when she moved, and her golden eyes could make even the bravest soldiers lower their heads in respect. She was strong, proud, and born to fight. As she stood in the arena training chamber, she sliced through a row of practice drones with her glowing energy blade. Sparks scattered across the polished floor. Her movements were sharp, precise, and graceful, like a storm dancing with purpose. Watching from the viewing platform, her fellow Valari warriors murmured words of admiration. "She is ready again," said one of them. "Who dares to face her this year?" asked another. Salira turned toward them, deactivating her blade. "Whoever it is," she said calmly, "they will learn what it means to stand before a Valari." Later that day, when the list of chosen challengers was displayed across the Galactic communication network, a wave of laughter rippled through Valari ranks. Among the names of great alien champions, the scaled Dravok hunters, the crystalline Aluth guardians, and the fiery Kelkin bladesmen, there was one that seemed almost out of place: Captain Elias Grant. Human. Earth. Salira stared at the name for a long moment. "A human?" she asked, her voice calm but curious. "They are sending a human to fight in the Trials of Valor." Her aide, a younger Valari officer, nodded. "Yes, Commander. It is their first time joining the trials. The humans have only recently become members of the Coalition. Perhaps they seek recognition." Salira's lips curved slightly. "Recognition? They seek it in the wrong place." The Valari respected courage, but they also believed in hierarchy. To them, humans were a young species, clever but physically weak, small in number and inexperienced in galactic warfare. They built machines well, yes, and had surprising endurance, but to challenge a Valari in single combat? That was almost laughable. Still, something about it stirred her interest. A species so fragile, yet bold enough to send one of their own to duel before the galaxy's strongest. That, she thought, was worth seeing. "Send a challenge," she ordered. "I will face this human personally. If he accepts, we shall meet in the arena." Meanwhile, far away aboard a human starship orbiting a small moon, Captain Elias Grant received the message. He read it twice before saying anything. "She challenged me?" he asked, glancing at the holographic display floating above the table. His fellow officers nodded nervously. "Yes, sir. Commander Salira Vex, the undefeated Valari champion." Elias leaned back in his chair, thinking. He had heard of her. Everyone in the Coalition had. The Valari Empire's greatest warrior, fast as lightning, strong as a machine, and honorable to the core. Facing her was like facing living legend. "Most people would decline," said Lieutenant Mira Chen, his second-in-command. "It's suicide, sir. No human has ever beaten a Valari warrior in direct combat." Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But someone has to be the first." He stood and looked out the viewing window. The moon's pale light reflected off his dark uniform. He was not a large man, nor did he look like a hero. But there was something in his eyes, a calm focus, quiet strength. He wasn't the kind who boasted. He simply believed that effort and preparation could overcome fear. "If we refuse," he said softly, "humanity stays a name on a list, one more young species among many. But if we fight, even if we lose with honor, they will remember us." Mira hesitated, then nodded slowly. "You really mean to do this?" "Yes," Elias said. "I accept her challenge." When news spread that the human had accepted, laughter echoed through many alien channels. Even the Valari were surprised. To them it was unthinkable, a soft-bodied creature of bone and flesh standing against a warrior who could crush steel with her bare hands. Salira herself read the confirmation message with raised eyebrows. "He accepted without hesitation," she said. Interesting. Her second-in-command looked uneasy. Perhaps he doesn't understand what he's facing. Salira shook her head. No, he understands. He accepts because he believes something important to his people. I will find out what it is. That night she stood on the balcony of her quarters gazing at the stars. Her mind wandered to the stories she had heard about humans. They were adaptable, inventive, and strangely emotional. Their history was full of struggle, yet they always survived, always rebuilt, always moved forward. There was a part of her, a warrior's curiosity, that wanted to see what gave them that strength. Perhaps, she whispered, this duel will not be as simple as I think. Days passed quickly. Across the galaxy, preparations began. The arena of empires was chosen as the battlefield, a vast structure floating above a gas giant, surrounded by viewing stations that could host millions. Newsfeeds buzzed with predictions and debates. Human will lose in under a minute. Maybe he'll surprise her. Valari honor means she won't go easy. He might not even survive. On the human ship, Elias spent every waking hour training. He knew brute strength would not help him. Instead, he focused on agility, timing, and strategy. He studied recordings of Valari duels, learning how they moved when they struck, how they responded to feints. He realized something important. Valari fought with confidence born from superiority. They expected others to play by their rules, so he would not play by them. He designed a new sword, not as heavy as a Valari energy blade, but made from a strong earth alloy reinforced with alien nanofibers. It could withstand her strikes, at least for a time. He also developed small adaptive sensors in his armor, helping him read movement speed and energy fluctuations. But more than the tools, Elias trained his mind. He practiced control, breathing, patience, reading opponents. Where Salira relied on muscle, he would rely on clarity and adaptation. The night before the duel, Mira came to see him. Sir, if you die out there, she began softly, Earth will remember you as a hero. Elias smiled gently. If I die, then I've done my duty. But I'm not going there to die. I'm going there to show them what it means to be human. On the day of the duel, the arena of empires shimmered with light. Thousands of ships from dozens of worlds gathered to witness history. Salira entered the preparation room first, wearing shining armor marked with golden patterns of victory. She looked calm and focused, her blade glowing faintly. Moments later, Elias entered from the opposite side. His armor was simpler, painted in the dark blue of Earth's space forces. He carried his sword in one hand, unactivated. When their eyes met for the first time, the air seemed to freeze. Neither spoke, but a spark of mutual understanding passed between them. Respect between warriors who had chosen the path of courage. From across the galaxy, countless voices whispered the same question. How can a human stand against her? Salira turned away, a faint smile touching her lips. We shall see, she murmured. And so began the duel that would soon be remembered across the stars, the moment when one human's courage challenged the pride of an empire. The galaxy buzzed with excitement. Every major news channel, from the shining worlds of the Valari Empire to the distant human colonies, talked about the upcoming duel. It was more than just a fight. It had become a symbol, the pride of a mighty empire versus the courage of a young race. On one side stood Commander Salira Vex, undefeated, powerful, and graceful. On the other stood Captain Elias Grant, calm, thoughtful, and determined. Two warriors from two very different worlds, bound by a single promise of honor, training on Valara Prime. The twin suns of Valara Prime burned bright over a massive training dome. Inside, the air shimmered with energy as Salira moved through her practice routines. Her energy blade flashed in the air, cutting through simulated targets with perfect precision. Every move was elegant yet deadly, each swing of her weapon sending ripples of blue light across the arena floor. Observers watched from behind transparent barriers, whispering in awe. She's faster than before. She doesn't even seem human. Of course not, another replied. She's Valari. Salira's mentor, General Thalon, an old warrior with a deep scar running across his face, stepped forward as she finished her final sequence. You're pushing yourself harder than ever, Commander, he said. I must, Salira replied, deactivating her blade. This duel is not like the others. It is not about defeating an equal opponent. It is about showing the galaxy what Valari honor means. Thalen gave her a firm look. Do not underestimate him just because he is human. They are unpredictable. Salira tilted her head. You think he can win? The old general chuckled. I think he can surprise you. And sometimes, surprise is more dangerous than strength. Salira respected her mentor deeply, and his words lingered in her mind long after he left. She had read about humans, their endless wars, their struggles, their creativity, and their spirit. She remembered how the humans had risen from one small world to become explorers among the stars in just a few short centuries. No other race had advanced so fast. Still, she could not forget what she was. A warrior bred for battle. A soldier who had fought for decades and never been defeated. She whispered quietly to herself, "Let the human come. I will face him with all the respect and all the strength I possess." Training on the human starship Horizon, while Salira trained with advanced alien technology, Captain Elias Grant trained in a small cold chamber aboard the human starship Horizon. The room was simple, no glowing lights, no perfect machines, just steel walls, a few simulation drones, and a practice sword. He practiced quietly, moving with rhythm and patience. Each strike, each dodge, each block was done with purpose. His sword was lighter than the Valari energy blade, but his technique relied on precision rather than power. Lieutenant Mira Chen entered the room carrying a datapad. "Captain," she said, "the Coalition channels are filled with comments about the duel. Most people think it's impossible for you to win. Elias didn't stop his training." "That's fine," he said between breaths. "Let them think that," Mira frowned. "Aren't you worried?" Elias paused, resting the sword on his shoulder. "Of course I am. But worry doesn't help. Preparation does." He placed his sword on the table and looked at a hologram of Salira projected in front of him. It was her record, dozens of duels, every one of them a victory. She was taller, stronger, faster. She had fought creatures far more dangerous than any human. Yet when he studied the footage carefully, he noticed something. A pattern. The Valari fought with pride. They believed in fair combat and visible strength in direct strikes. They rarely adapted mid-fight because they didn't have to. No one ever lasted long enough to force them to. Elias smiled slightly. "She's confident. Too confident. That's my opening." Mira crossed her arms. "You plan to trick her?" "No," Elias replied. "I plan to show her something she's never seen before. How humans fight when they have no chance but still refuse to quit." A message from Earth later that evening. A message arrived from Earth. It was from the United Human Council wishing him luck. They reminded him that the entire human race was watching. Billions of people across dozens of colonies would tune in to see the duel. Elias read the message silently, then closed it. Pressure didn't scare him, but it reminded him what this fight meant. It wasn't just his duel. It was humanity's chance to prove they were worthy members of the galactic community. He walked to the observation deck, where stars shone like tiny candles in the dark. "Billions of them are watching," he murmured. "But I'm not fighting for applause. I'm fighting so they never have to bow their heads again." Salira's thoughts far away in her private quarters, Salira also stood before a window of stars. She held her blade, running her fingers along the polished metal. Despite her confidence, she couldn't shake a strange feeling. The human's calm acceptance of her challenge. It puzzled her. Why had he not refused? Why had he not shown fear? She opened a communication channel to the Coalition database and began to read about humanity again. Their wars, their art, their music, their stories of survival. She read about ancient humans who had faced impossible odds. Soldiers, explorers, dreamers, people who built civilizations from nothing. "They are strange," she whispered. "They fight not only to win, but to prove something to themselves." For the first time in many years, Salira felt something unexpected. Curiosity. She began to look forward to the duel, not for the glory of victory, but to see this human with her own eyes. The day before the duel, the final day before the duel arrived. Across the galaxy, crowds gathered in massive halls, homes, and ships to watch the pre-event broadcasts. The arena of empires floated high above the swirling blue clouds of a gas giant, its transparent walls glowing like crystal. Inside the human quarters of the arena, Elias checked his armor one last time. It was simple but strong. a design that allowed free movement and had built-in energy dampeners to absorb shock. He carried his sword in a protective sheath, feeling its weight neither heavy nor light but balanced, just like his resolve. Mira entered the room, her expression tight. "This is it, sir. The galaxy will remember this day no matter how it ends." Elias smiled slightly. "Then let's make sure they remember it for the right reasons." He turned toward the mirror. The man who stared back wasn't perfect. There were tired lines under his eyes, a small scar on his cheek, and a calmness that came not from arrogance but from acceptance. He wasn't trying to be the strongest. He was just doing what humans did best, adapting and enduring. Celira's final training in her preparation chamber, Celira stood surrounded by her fellow warriors. General Thalon placed a hand on her shoulder. "Remember, Commander," he said, "honor is not in victory. It is in how you fight," she nodded. "I know, old friend. I will face him with respect." Her armor shimmered as she activated its systems. The golden plates locked perfectly over her form, glowing with soft energy. She took one slow breath, steady and focused. There was no fear in her heart, only determination. When her blade came alive with light, even her fellow Valari stepped back in awe. She looked like a living star. Across the galaxy that night, billions of beings watched from every world, humans, Valari, and countless others. Some cheered for Celira, others whispered prayers for Elias. In bars, schools, and stations, screens glowed with anticipation. Children on Earth pointed at the display and asked, "Can we really win?" And their parents, with quiet pride, answered, "He doesn't need to win. He just needs to show them who we are." The calm before the storm, in the final hour before the duel, both warriors stood in silence on opposite sides of the arena's massive gates. The only sound was the hum of energy fields and the low rhythm of their own breathing. Elias closed his eyes, remembering his home, his people, and the earth beneath the stars. Celira closed hers, remembering her honor, her pride, and the ancient code of her people. Neither hated the other. They simply stood for what they believed in, and that was enough to make this duel more than just a fight. When the gates began to open, bright light spilled into the corridor, bathing both warriors in gold. Elias tightened his grip on his sword. Celira lifted her blade in salute. Across the galaxy, voices fell silent as the announcement echoed through the stars. The duel of honor begins. The arena of empires floated in the deep skies above a blue gas giant. Its transparent dome shimmered like a jewel, reflecting the light of 3 nearby suns. Inside, thousands of beings from every corner of the galaxy filled the stands. Their faces, tentacles, scales, and eyes all turned toward the center platform, where history was about to be written. At the heart of the arena stood 2 gates, one silver, one blue. Behind each gate waited a warrior, the gathering silence. When the arena lights dimmed, a powerful voice echoed through the hall. "Honored guests of the Galactic Coalition, today we witness a duel unlike any other. From the proud Valari Empire, Commander Celira Vex, undefeated champion, and from the rising world called Earth, Captain Elias Grant, first of his kind to stand in the trials of valor." The crowd roared. Sparks of light shot into the air. The noise was deafening, yet behind the 2 gates there was only silence. Elias stood still, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. He took a slow breath. His armor felt heavy, but his mind was clear. The moment he had trained for, dreamed about, and feared was finally here. Across the arena, Celira waited as well. Her golden armor glowed faintly. She closed her eyes for a second, repeating the ancient Valari code. Honor through courage, strength through truth, victory through respect. Then she opened her eyes, sharp, focused, ready. The gates opened with a deep, metallic hum. Elias stepped forward. Celira did the same. The crowd fell silent as the 2 figures met under the bright lights. One tall and glowing like a star. The other calm, grounded, and very human. They stopped a few meters apart. Celira bowed slightly, her movements graceful. "Captain Grant," she said, her voice strong but not unkind. "You stand here knowing what awaits you." "I respect your courage," Elias returned the bow. "Commander Vex, I've heard stories of your strength. I'm honored to face you." Their eyes met, and in that moment both understood that this duel was not about hatred or pride. It was about proving something deeper, the spirit of their species, The first strike, begin. The announcer's voice rang. In an instant, Celira moved. Her blade flared to life, glowing bright blue as it sliced through the air. She moved with speed that no human could match, each swing so fast it left a trail of light behind. Elias barely dodged the first strike, rolling to the side. The ground hissed where her blade had touched, melting the stone floor. The crowd gasped. "He's too slow," someone shouted. "It's already over." But Elias didn't panic. He stayed calm, breathing steadily. Every time she attacked, he shifted, stepped back, or deflected with his lighter sword. Her power was overwhelming, yet he began to notice a rhythm in her attacks, a pattern hidden beneath her perfect skill. Celira pressed forward, her eyes focused. "Why do you retreat, human? Face me." Elias smiled slightly. "You're faster than I expected." She struck again, harder this time, sending a wave of energy that threw dust into the air. Elias slid backward but stayed on his feet. His sword vibrated from the force. To the audience, it looked one-sided. To Celira, however, something felt strange. Every time she thought she had him cornered, he escaped at the last second, as if he already knew where she would strike next. The human strategy. Minutes passed. The crowd shouted louder, expecting Celira to end it soon. Yet the human still stood. Elias's movements grew smoother. He stopped blocking with full strength. Instead, he redirected her strikes, letting her own energy slide past. His breathing slowed. He was no longer reacting, he was reading her. Celira frowned slightly. This had never happened before. Her opponents usually fell within the first minute, but this man, this human, kept moving, learning, adapting. She feinted left, then struck right. He blocked perfectly. She spun, changing angles mid-air. He stepped aside and countered with a quick slash that grazed her armor. It didn't hurt her, but the sound of metal meeting metal echoed across the arena. The audience gasped. He touched her armor. For the first time in years, Celira stepped back. She looked down at the small scratch on her chest plate, then at the human in front of her. He was breathing heavily, but his eyes were calm, steady, confident. "That was well done," she said softly. "Thank you," Elias replied, lifting his sword again. "Your turn." The duel intensified. Celira smiled faintly. For the first time in many duels, she felt something new, excitement. She attacked again, but this time she changed her rhythm. Elias adjusted instantly. She increased her speed. He slowed his pace. It became a dance of energy and instinct, steel and light. Each time her blade cut through the air, Elias found a way to dodge or deflect it. He moved with purpose, using small steps to waste no motion. Where she used power, he used timing. Where she attacked directly, he looked for the smallest opening. The longer the duel lasted, the more people began to realize that this human was not losing. He was adapting faster than anyone had expected. "Impossible," whispered one Valari spectator. "He's matching her tempo." From the upper stands, even General Thalon leaned forward, his eyes narrowing with interest. "So this is what humanity brings to the stars," he murmured. "Not strength, but learning." The turning point after nearly 10 minutes of fighting, both warriors slowed. Sparks flickered around them. The arena floor was scarred and cracked from their movements. Elias's armor was scratched and dented. Sweat dripped down his face. His arms trembled slightly from fatigue, but his eyes remained sharp. Celira's breathing had grown heavier too. Her energy blade hummed, its light flickering as she adjusted her stance. She had never fought this long against a single opponent. "You fight well," she said, breathing hard. "For one so young to the stars." Elias nodded. "You too. But strength alone doesn't win a battle." Her golden eyes narrowed. "Show me then." "Show me what does." Elias tightened his grip. He watched the small vibrations in her blade, the way her feet pressed into the ground before each attack, the half-second shift of her shoulders that gave away direction. He waited, calm and patient. When she lunged, he moved faster than he ever had before. He sidestepped, using her own momentum against her, and swept his blade across in a perfect counter-arc. Celira spun away, but too late. His sword touched her armor again, cutting a second line across her shoulder plate. The crowd roared. He struck again. Celira looked at him, surprise flickering in her golden eyes. Then she laughed softly. "You're teaching me something, Captain. This is no longer just a duel. It is a lesson. The lesson of humanity." She pressed forward again, and this time Elias didn't retreat. He met her strike head-on. Their blades clashed, sending a shockwave across the arena. Sparks flew between them, blue and silver light mixing in a storm of brilliance. Each clash was faster than the last. Neither spoke. Their movements told the story, of strength meeting adaptability, of pride meeting perseverance. Then, in a final exchange, Celera brought her blade down in a powerful strike. Elias caught it with both hands, their swords locked. For a heartbeat, it looked as if her superior strength would crush him. But Elias stepped closer instead of pulling away, twisting his wrist and using her own force to redirect the blow. Her weapon slipped slightly off balance. In that tiny moment, he moved. One clean, precise motion, and his sword's edge touched her neckplate. The crowd fell silent. No sound, no movement. Just the two of them breathing hard, eyes locked. Elias slowly lowered his weapon and stepped back. "I could have ended it," he said quietly, "but that's not what I came here to do." Celera stood still, her heart pounding. No one had ever done that to her before. No one had ever reached her in a duel and then chosen mercy over victory. The moment of respect, the announcer's voice trembled. "The human has disarmed the Velari champion." The audience erupted into chaos. Some shouted in disbelief. Others cheered wildly. On Earth, billions of humans rose to their feet. Across alien worlds, silence filled command halls. Celera deactivated her blade. Slowly, she raised her right hand and struck her chest in the Velari salute of respect. "You have my honor, Captain Grant," she said softly. "You fought not as a conqueror, but as a true warrior." Elias bowed deeply. "And you, Commander Vex, showed me what strength really means." The duel was over, but neither felt like they had won or lost. Instead, something larger had been achieved. Mutual respect between two races that had never understood each other before. The stars outside the arena shone brighter, as if the galaxy itself had witnessed the birth of a new kind of victory, not one of domination, but of understanding. The arena was filled with a roaring sound that echoed through the air. Thousands of beings from different species shouted and cheered as the duel between Commander Celera Vex and Captain Elias Grant continued. The energy in the air felt heavy, almost alive. The two warriors stood across from each other, both breathing hard, both covered in dust and sweat, yet neither ready to stop. Celera tightened her grip on her glowing energy blade. The light flickered with her movement, showing her face calm but serious. Elias, on the other hand, held his metal sword with both hands. His body was tired, but his eyes were still focused. There was no fear in them, only determination. For the first few moments, neither of them moved. They studied each other carefully. The crowd waited in silence, their excitement turning into suspense. Every spectator, from insectoid traders to scaled warriors, leaned forward, not wanting to miss a second of what would happen next. Celera finally broke the silence. "You are better than I expected, human," she said, her voice clear and firm. "But you cannot last much longer." Elias smiled faintly even as he struggled to control his breathing. "Maybe," he replied softly. "But I've lasted this long, haven't I?" For a brief second, Celera's eyes softened. There was respect there, hidden under her pride. She had fought many warriors from across the galaxy, but none had stayed standing against her this long, especially not a human. She had thought this would be easy, but now she knew it was far from that. Then, without warning, she attacked again. Her movement was fast, so fast that the air itself seemed to tear apart as her blade cut through it. The glowing sword swung toward Elias in a wide arc, but Elias was ready. He stepped aside, barely escaping the blow, and countered with a quick strike aimed at her shoulder. Celera blocked it, sparks flying as the blades met. The impact echoed like thunder across the arena. They exchanged several blows, one after another, each faster, sharper, and more dangerous than before. Celera pushed forward, her attacks growing stronger. She used her full strength now, trying to overpower him. Elias could feel the force behind every strike. His arms shook from the effort of blocking, his hands numb from the vibration. He could tell his strength was fading, but his mind remained sharp. He had studied her style for days, and now he was beginning to see it clearly. Her pattern, her rhythm, her habits. Celera was powerful, yes, but she had become predictable. He began to move differently, faster, lighter. He started to use his smaller size as an advantage, dodging at the last possible moment, using quick footwork to stay out of reach. Each time she missed, her frustration grew. "You run well, human," she said with a sharp tone. "But this is not a race." Elias only smiled again. "No," he said, "it's a lesson." Before she could ask what he meant, he moved in with sudden speed. He stepped closer than before, too close for her long strikes. His sword flashed upward, leaving a thin mark on the side of her armor. The audience gasped. Even Celira froze for a moment. She looked down at the glowing mark where his blade had cut through her suit. It wasn't deep, but it was the first time anyone had touched her armor in a duel. For a moment, her pride and surprise collided. Then she looked back up at Elias. There was no mockery in his expression. No arrogance. Only quiet focus. Something shifted inside her. This wasn't a human fighting for fame or reward. This was someone who truly believed in what he stood for. Someone who refused to give up no matter how strong the enemy. Celira took a deep breath, then smiled. A real smile, not one of superiority, but of respect. "You are full of surprises, Captain Grant," she said. Elias nodded once. "And you are not as unbeatable as I thought," he answered calmly. The crowd's excitement grew louder. The duel had turned from a simple fight into something much greater. It had become a test of heart and mind. Celira changed her fighting stance. Her strikes became more careful, more tactical. She was no longer trying to crush him. She was testing him, learning from him. The two warriors began to move in perfect rhythm, each strike and counter blending into the next like a deadly dance. Their blades clashed again and again, light and metal flashing under the alien suns. Dust rose from the ground as their feet moved in circles, each one trying to outthink the other. The noise of the crowd faded away. All that existed for them now was the fight. Their movements, their breath, the sound of their weapons. After several intense exchanges, both fighters were showing signs of exhaustion. Celira's arms trembled slightly. Elias's breathing was heavy, sweat dripping into his eyes. But still, neither gave up. Then came the moment that changed everything. Celira charged again, bringing her sword down with incredible power. Elias blocked it, but the force pushed him to one knee. The energy blade crackled inches from his face. Celira leaned forward, trying to press him down, but Elias didn't resist with strength. Instead, he used her power against her. He rolled sideways, letting her weight carry her forward. As she stumbled a step, he twisted his sword upward, catching her weapon and turning it away. The move was quick and smooth, almost too fast to see. Before anyone understood what happened, Celira's glowing blade flew out of her hand and landed several meters away, embedding itself into the arena floor. Gasps filled the air. The sound of the audience fell into complete silence. Elias stood up slowly, holding his sword. He walked forward and stopped in front of her. His weapon rested just below her chin, but he didn't strike. Celira looked up at him. Her chest rose and fell as she breathed hard. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Elias stepped back and lowered his sword. "You've lost your weapon," he said quietly, "but not your honor." Celira stared at him, eyes wide. Then she gave a short laugh, soft, respectful, and full of something new. She had never been treated this way before. Most warriors would have taken advantage of that moment, claiming victory and pride. But this human had chosen respect. The judges of the duel, a council of alien elders, whispered among themselves. The spectators began to murmur, realizing that they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Celira finally walked toward her fallen blade, picked it up, and turned back to face him. But instead of attacking, she held the blade across her chest in a sign of respect. "I see now," she said quietly, "why your kind is feared and admired in equal measure. You fight not for pride, but for meaning." Elias gave a tired but honest smile. "We fight because we must," he replied, "and because we believe we can always find a way." Her eyes softened again. "Perhaps that is your greatest strength," she said. "Not muscle or speed, but the heart that keeps trying, even when logic says you should fail." The crowd erupted in applause, a sound that echoed across the arena like thunder. For the first time, many alien species looked at the human race not as weak newcomers, but as something different, something strong in a quiet, unbreakable way. Celira nodded once more, accepting her defeat with pride and dignity. Elias bowed his head slightly in return. The fight was over, but the respect they had earned for each other would remain forever. And as the crowd continued to cheer, Celira Vex thought to herself, perhaps strength is not just power. Perhaps it is something that lives in the human spirit, something no blade can defeat. The arena lights shone brightly, reflecting off the polished surfaces of the giant structure. The crowd continued to cheer wildly, their excitement echoing across the stars. Ships hovered in the sky above the gas giant, and millions of beings from different worlds watched the live transmissions with bated breath. At the center of the arena, Captain Elias Grant and Commander Celira Vex stood facing each other. Their blades had fallen to the floor, their armor was scratched and dented, and their bodies were weary. Yet their eyes spoke of something deeper than the duel itself: respect, understanding, and a shared sense of honor. For Celira, the reality was clear. This human, small and fragile compared to her own towering form, had done something no one had ever done before. He had met her strength with mind, patience, and courage, and in doing so, had earned a victory not measured in wounds or falls, but in honor. Recognition. Across the galaxy, as the judges confirmed the outcome, the announcement echoed through the arena. Captain Elias Grant of Earth is declared the victor by skill, strategy, and courage. Commander Celira Vex of the Valari Empire acknowledges the outcome and grants her respect. The words reverberated through the spectators' hearts. The crowd erupted into a mixture of cheers, gasps, and silence in awe. Across distant worlds, news of the duel spread instantly through communication channels. On Earth, billions celebrated. Children stared wide-eyed at the screens, imagining themselves standing in the arena one day. Parents hugged them tightly, whispering words of pride. This was more than a duel. It was proof that humans could stand among the galaxy's strongest, even among the Valari. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some were shocked that a human had survived so long. Others were amazed at his skill. Yet all agreed. This duel had changed their perception forever. The moment of mutual respect, Celira stepped forward slowly. Her energy blade was now unlit, resting by her side. She raised her hand and made the Valari salute of honor. "You have my respect, Captain Grant," she said firmly, her voice clear for all to hear. "You fought not as a weak species trying to survive, but as a true warrior. You have shown the galaxy what humanity truly is." Elias nodded and returned the salute, bowing slightly. "Thank you, Commander Vex. You fought with unmatched skill and strength. I have learned from you as well. Your honor is not only in your victory, but in how you fight with respect." The two warriors stood there for a moment, the crowd quieting as they witnessed this extraordinary exchange. It was a moment of pure recognition where pride, courage, and understanding crossed species boundaries. Reflections. After the duel later, in a quieter part of the arena, Celira and Elias sat together to speak away from the cameras and crowd. "You surprised me," Celira said quietly. "I expected fear, hesitation, maybe arrogance, but not calm determination, not courage so deep that it never falters." Elias smiled slightly. "I prepared as best I could. I trained my mind as much as my body, but I also wanted to prove something beyond victory. I wanted to show that humans never stop trying, even when the odds are against them." Celira nodded. "Your kind. It is strange. Small in number, yet so persistent. Weak in strength, yet so strong in spirit. I can see why humans survived their wars, why you conquered your world, why you reached the stars in such a short time." Elias looked thoughtful. "We survive because we believe there is always a way forward. We learn, we adapt, and we refuse to give up. That is our greatest weapon." Celira looked out at the stars. "And now I understand why the galaxy should not underestimate you. Not because you are strong, but because your spirit cannot be broken." The galactic impact word of the duel traveled faster than any message or broadcast. Across the galaxy, alien species began to reconsider humans. The perception of them as weak newcomers changed to a recognition of resilience, intelligence, and courage. Valari leaders discussed the duel in council chambers. Many had assumed that humans could never match them, but seeing Elias succeed had challenged their beliefs. Some warriors even asked for records of human training, hoping to understand the methods of a species that could think, adapt, and overcome with skill rather than raw power. The human colonies celebrated, sending messages of congratulations and pride. Elias's name became known as a symbol of courage and innovation. Not just a soldier, but a human who changed how the galaxy viewed his species. Personal growth and understanding. For Celira, the duel was transformative. She had always believed that strength and training determined a warrior's success, but Elias had shown her another truth. that courage, adaptability, and willpower were as powerful as any blade or skill. She returned to Valara Prime, carrying not shame but a new respect. She began teaching her warriors not just how to fight with power, but how to adapt, observe, and learn. She told them stories of the human warrior who had humbled her in a duel and inspired countless beings with nothing but determination. Elias returned to Earth, welcomed as a hero. Yet he remained humble, knowing that the victory was not just his. It belonged to all of humanity, their persistence, creativity, and unwillingness to surrender in the face of impossible odds. He trained the next generation of human soldiers, teaching them the lessons he had learned in the duel: patience, observation, courage, and the power of the mind alongside the body. The legacy of the duel came to be remembered as the Trial of Hearts, a turning point in galactic history. It was no longer about who was stronger or faster, but about understanding the value of determination, respect, and intelligence. In schools on Earth, children were taught the story of Captain Elias Grant, a human who stood against the galaxy's mightiest warrior and showed the universe that humans were more than fragile beings. They were resilient, clever, and courageous. On Valara Prime, Salira Vex's warriors trained with new ideas. They learned not just to strike harder, but to think faster, read their opponents, and adapt to any challenge. Her respect for humans grew into admiration, and she often spoke of the lesson Elias had taught her. Strength of heart can surpass strength of muscle. Across the stars, beings of all kinds came to understand a simple truth. When a species fights with courage, intelligence, and determination, nothing can truly stop them, not even the strongest warrior in the galaxy. A quiet moment between two warriors one evening. After the arena celebrations ended, Salira and Elias met one last time on the observation deck above the gas giant. The suns reflected off the horizon, casting long golden streaks of light across the deck. "You taught me something," Salira said softly. "I thought strength was enough, but I see now that strength alone is not victory." "And you taught me," Elias replied, "that even the strongest warrior can be kind, fair, and honorable. That is why your duel was more than a fight. It was a lesson for everyone watching." They looked out at the stars together, quiet for a moment, sharing the stillness after the storm. Salira smiled faintly. "Perhaps one day humans and Valari will fight side by side instead of against each other." "I would be proud to stand beside your people," Elias nodded, "and I would be proud to fight alongside yours. Together, maybe we can achieve more than we ever imagined." The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter that night, as if the universe itself had witnessed a new alliance forming, not just between two warriors, but between two species that had learned to respect each other. Conclusion: the duel had ended, but its effects would last for generations. The story of Captain Elias Grant and Commander Salira Vex became legendary, not because of victory or defeat, but because it showed the universe that courage, determination, and intelligence could overcome even the greatest challenges. Humans, once considered fragile newcomers, were now respected as a force to be reckoned with. Valari warriors, once proud and unchallenged, had learned humility and the importance of observation and strategy. And in the hearts of those who had witnessed the duel, one lesson remained clear. True strength is not only in the body, it is in the heart. The mind and the will to rise even when all odds are against you. The galaxy had changed forever. And somewhere under the endless stars, two warriors, one human, one Valari, smiled at the knowledge that they had shown everyone what honor, courage, and respect truly meant.